Let's create the actual function that, our async function that actually gets the data from online. So I'm going to call this const fetch products, like this one. Ooh, thank you, GitHub Copilot. It's an asynchronous function, so I'm going to be using try, catch, and finally in here. Since I'm just fetching things, I don't need to create any parameters or arguments here because I'm just grabbing information. I'm not passing anything through like an ID. And I'm just gonna do the final thing. So here, after the async here, after this parenthesis, since we are doing TypeScript, you don't need to do this specifically all the time, but I'm just going to declare this one. So creating the signature or the function signature. So we will receive a promise from Mongo here, right? So that's usually the case when we do things like with fetch and JSON, and it will be a void. I know this now because I know the structure of the function, of course, but there will be no return statement in this. So if there's no return statement in your functions in TypeScript, they become void. And if you have a return like a calculation that will return a number, then you of course pass through a number or a string or a union type of both or something like this. So in here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the loading value to true. So immediately when it loads, go true. So we'll have this page that says loading instead of just a blank page, and we let the user wait and don't give them any sort of indication. So change this to true, and then of course we'll change this back once the product is here. So the first thing we're going to do is going to do a try, and immediately after this a catch, and there will be an error in this one, and then we're going to do a finally for the final one. So do this if everything else fails, you'll still do this regardless of the outcome up here. We might as well just do, I'll just do the try here. Oh, if I can get the mouse to do correctly. So inside the try, we're going to do a const response. And this will be an await. Sorry, I'm going to type this one out. So we are going to await whatever information we get since we're using an async one. So we can do this, you can do multiple things at once instead of sequentially. So without the async, you'll do one thing and then one thing and one thing. But with an await, we can do or make the system just run everything smoothly at the same time. We're going to use fetch. I'm not going to use axios and things like this, but if you want to, feel free, not an issue. We're going to do a comma or a apostrophe, and I'm going to copy this path here. This is also why I opened it. So this path is my fetch. I want to fetch this information from the JSON that I have access to, right? This looks like this as on raw. I have a little add-on called JSON converter or something, I can't remember. That will make it look a little bit more nice. So I'm just going to paste this in here, have this here, and again, always do this, and then go to your browser, open a new one, paste it, test it to see if you get it, then we know it works, right? So that's the first part. We're going to store this in response so we can use it later. I like to do checks immediately. So if this doesn't work, I'm just going to stop the function immediately because there's no point of continuing, and it's a good practice to do these things. So if there is no response for response, if I can spell correctly, .ok, if it's not okay, we will have the system fail, right? So we're going to throw an error. Oops, I did too many parentheses. I'm going to remove one of them. So if no responses are here, then we're going to throw an error called no data available. So immediately stop the function if this doesn't work. There's no point of continuing with the rest. We don't need to try to store stuff into an array that doesn't exist. So that's the point here. Next step will be to create a some place to store the information we get, right? And we're going to do one called data. And I'm going to do another await function in here. So make sure it runs asynchronous. That's the word. And I'm going to grab the response. And since we're receiving Since we're receiving JSON, we're going to convert it into something we can use more easily into the system. So we're parsing the JSON through. You can see here this is highlighted right now. It says declared but not used, but that's not the issue and why I want to go to this one. Here I want to declare the type I'm using in the system, since we're using TypeScript. And the type I'm using is product. So I'm going to declare that on data I am going to be using the product, which comes from, if I hit the right keys here, which is an array type. So here declaring it very specifically, so if you're working along with other users, other developers, or you're just coming back to this in like a month, a year, you really are it's really very specific on what this this data object or this data variable here will contain, should contain. Products is the next one. We want to grab this information from products, and we want to store them up here. So this is the products we're going to use for the information we get, right? So we immediately store them in data here. We declare what type it is. We await a response. And once we have this, we're going to store it in value because I'm using a ref in Vue. So we have to do .value if you're using a reactive, which is mainly objects. You don't have to do .value. And we're going to assign the data we get into this this here. And now we can do a console log, and we can do product fetched, and product value here. So that's the first step for this one. Now in our catch, because we have a catch, if we have an error, we need to handle it and then show the error, what is, like if it's a you're not logged in, or a path page doesn't exist, like for and so on. So we're gonna do the error.value because we have a constant up here. Again, it's a ref, so that's why we do .value, and we're going to store the error message like this. We can assign the actual data type here. So it says error is a type of unknown, and it doesn't like this. So inside this, since we're immediately going from the message, so this is an object we receive, and inside this there's a message. So do parentheses immediately after this one, and then go, no, after it, before it, and then you type as error, and then end the parentheses. Still the same as this one up here. Again, these two are just the names. So if you change this name to something else, make sure they are the same. But we're just declaring it in like normal TypeScript with the as here. In this case, an error, or if it's like an HTML input field or whatever you're doing. Finally, that's the last one we'll do, is we're going to do loading value, and we're going to set it back to false. So maybe it'll help me. Set value. That's right. No matter what happens, the loading will be set to false. So if this one goes, it will be set to false. If the try one goes, this will also still continue to be set to false, which is like really nice if you want to do these things. So kind of like resetting it in this case. To be able to actually use these in other components, we need to return. So inside this function, so before the final, the yellow bracket here, we need to do a return statement. I'm going to do another space, return, and bracket. So here we're going to return the things we want to have access through inside the Vue environment. And we have four things. We have error, loading, products, and then the fetch function, right? So there's four things, and if you look at the line here, like this fits on neatly on this line. So these are the four things I need to have access to, and thank you, Copilot. Error, loading, product, and fetch product. So these are the things we need. I'll just scroll through. There's no errors, which is great. So we'll save this, and then in the next video, if I can click save correctly, we will load them into our products.vue.